Hey kids, so this is a problem that I did in class, or I set up in class, and I wanted to just demonstrate it before you start on the homework. Excuse me. So the setup here is this: my faucet is leaking at home, and I call the plumber and I say, "Hey, my faucet's leaking. Can you come over and check it out?" And the plumber says, "Well, is it an emergency or I'm available in 2 days. Can you wait 2 days?" And I say, "Well, I don't know. I'm not sure whether it's leaking a lot of water or not." And the plumber says, "Well, why don't you go to the sink and for 1 minute capture water in a measuring cup and see how much comes out after a minute." And I do that, and I find that I've got 8 fluid ounces in the container after 60 seconds, exactly a minute. And I get back on the phone and I say to the plumber, I've lost uh, 8 fluid ounces in 1 minute. And the plumber then needs to make a calculation to determine how much water I'm losing every day. Okay, and we're going to do that calculation now to find out how much water are we losing every day. Excuse me. So down here on the bottom, oops, down here on the bottom, I have uh, I have created these conversions, and I just want to go over them really quick. Some conversions we need, some we don't. We got to determine which ones do we need. Okay, so I've got 60 minutes is equal to an hour. You can either have 60 minutes on top and an hour on the bottom, or vice versa, an hour on top and 60 minutes on the bottom, right? You have to decide which way you need it. And as we said in class, 60 minutes is exactly the same as 1 hour. So if we were going to multiply by this ratio or this fraction, you would be essentially multiplying by 1 because it's the same amount top and bottom. So this amount that we're talking about here would end up looking different. It would have different units, but it wouldn't change the amount that the rate at which it's leaking. So 60 minutes is 1 hour. We have 1 minute is 60 seconds, or 60 seconds to 1 minute. We also have 1 day to 24 hours, or 24 hours to 1 day. And we have 128 fluid ounces to 1 gallon, or 1 gallon to 128 fluid ounces. Okay, that's just a fact that a gallon holds 128 fluid ounces. And for those of you that are wondering, yes, I will be providing you with this type of information so you don't have to memorize it all. Okay, so what are we doing here? Well, what we eventually want to do, and I want to write this down. We eventually want to, at the end of this, we want to be left with gallons per day. Oops, sorry, hard to write like this. Gallons per day. And we've determined that we want to kind of calculate it to be for every 1 day. Okay? So how many gallons for every 1 day? Sorry, that's a little sloppy, but okay. So what do we need to convert? Well, if we're going to do this multiplication, we want to turn fluid ounces into gallons. So we need a ratio of fluid ounces to gallons. Well, notice that fluid ounces is on top. We want to end up canceling that unit out. So if it's on top here, we need this one where it's on the bottom here in order for them to cancel out. So like that, okay? And you can see right away, and I'll just do this straight away, the fluid ounces and the fluid ounces as units are going to cancel out. So right now what we've got then is gallons per minute if we were to do this calculation, okay? Now we need to convert this. So by the way, we describe that as saying this is a capacity or volume units, right? Fluid ounces and gallons, that's how much a container can hold, or how much volume or how much liquid, right? This is time. We've got minutes. We're trying to switch it to days. So let's do the switch from minutes first to hours, and then we can go from hours to days. So if we have minutes down here and we want to cancel it, we're going to have minutes on the top. And we're going to go from minutes to hours. See this one right here? We're not trying to turn this into smaller units, seconds. We're trying to turn it into larger units, days. So this right here, we're not using these because, and I wrote them there just to point out that it's easy to confuse things if you don't know which way you're going, what you're trying to turn it into. You could choose some wrong unit of conversion, like a minute is 60 seconds, but we're not trying to make it into seconds. We want to go to hours and eventually to days. So how do we do that? Well, we've got, again, as I said, we've got minutes here on the bottom, so we want to have minutes on top. That's this right here. And so we're going to drop this in like that and say that times, oops, that times that, okay, times. And eventually then we want to change from hours to days. Changing it to hours is just kind of intermediate. If you knew how many minutes were in a day, you could calculate that pretty easily by doing 60 times 24. You could straight away do that as well. So anyway, we want to cancel hours. Hours is now on the bottom, so we want to pick the one where hours is on top and days, the unit we're trying to get to, is on the bottom. So we take that, we drop that in there, and we say that times that. Okay? And I'm just going to get rid of the rest of this. Oops, we don't need it. We don't need the rest of this to solve this problem, so I'm just going to drag this stuff out of the way. Oops. Stack it up down here out of our way. And this is what we're dealing with now. Okay? So now let's cancel. Let's see what else we can cancel. We can cancel the rest of the units. Let's cancel the units. Minutes and minutes cancel out. Hours and hours cancel out. And what you see is left for units on the top is gallons, which is what we want to have. And on the bottom is days, which is what we want to have. Okay? Now, all of these are ones on the bottom of each one of these, and that's not going to get any smaller. This is the thing that we're going to end up using to cancel with the numbers on top that are also not one. This gallon, 1 gallon, that's already down to 1, so it's not going to cancel any further. Okay? So what can we do? Well, I'm going to use blue now. We're going to cancel, let's say 128, and well, they're all even. All the numbers that are not 1 are even. So let's just say this. We're going to say, if I took half of that, that is 64, and I could take half of that is 4. Notice I didn't pick the biggest thing that you could cancel by, but that's just fine. You can do that, and then you can cancel the result. So what about 64? How do we cancel 64 and 4? Well, you can actually divide those both by 4, and this becomes 16, and this becomes 1. Okay? What else can we do? Well, we still got the 16 on the bottom, so let's cancel the 16 and the 24. 16 and 24 are both multiples of 8, so if we cancel this 16 and this 24 by 8, you'd get a 2 here and a 3 here. We've still got this 2 on the bottom, and I'm going to cancel that by dividing that by 2. That's 1. Dividing this by 2, that is 30. Now we've got everything on the bottom is canceled down to 1. And so 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is going to give us that 1 day that we're looking for. And if we multiply the numbers on top, we've got 1 times 1. We can kind of ignore the 1s because they're not going to increase anything when we multiply, but is 1 times 30 is 30 times 3 is 90. And that results in a leak of 90 gallons. So essentially what we've discovered here is that my faucet is leaking 90 gallons of water per day. And now that I see it in that terms, I realize, wow, that is a lot of water. That is a lot of water that we're losing out of our Tinaco. And we don't get water from the city every day. It's sometimes it's on for a few hours and then it's not on for a couple of days. So if we're losing 90 gallons a day and we don't get water for the next 2 days, that means that's 180 gallons of water we're going to lose in addition to anything that we use, right? Because this is just simply leaking out without us even taking any from what we use. And when we think about this, we say, you know what, that's way too much water. Yeah, I think it's an emergency and I think that you need to come now. And so that's what we do. And we have the plumber come now to fix our leak, because when we see it as up here, 8 ounces a minute, we might not be able to clearly see how much is that really? That seems like a small amount, but it's also a small amount of time. When you extend it to a full day, you realize, oh, a lot of water. Um, and that's kind of a real world situation that you might need to take something that you couldn't really measure you certainly couldn't measure 90 gallons because you don't have containers that would measure 90 gallons accurately, and you certainly couldn't catch it for a full day and then report back to the plumber. So taking some small sample in a short amount of time and then saying, what is that? If it keeps continuing at that rate for an entire day, what would it be? Then you can kind of make better, you can get a better understanding of what will happen over the course of the day just by a small 1 minute sample measurement. Does that make sense? Hope that helps. Ask me any questions you've got about that.